She woke up that morning to the gray light of winter filtering through her small apartment window. The cold bit at her skin as she reluctantly dragged herself out of bed. She had slept poorly again, dreams tangled with worries that refused to leave her mind. Lately, it seemed like every step she took led to another disappointment. She had lost her job a month ago, and each day since had stretched out long and empty. Bills piled up on the kitchen counter. Unopened letters demanding payments that she could not make. And eviction notices that made her stomach twist into knots. She had once imagined life differently. She had hoped for steady work, for friendships that felt like a warm blanket on a cold night, for love that would not fade away. But those dreams seemed to slip further from her grasp each day. Her friends, busy with their own lives, seemed to forget about her. Calls went unanswered, messages left without reply. Even her family, though they cared in their way, could not bridge the distance that her solitude had created. She felt like she had become invisible, a ghost wandering through a world that had no room for her pain. That morning, she forced herself to get ready. She pulled on her worn coat, the one with the frayed sleeves, and tied her scarf tightly around her neck. She avoided the mirror as much as possible. The reflection she saw was not the person she wanted to be. Her hair fell in uneven strands. Her eyes held dark circles that would not disappear no matter how many hours she slept. She stepped outside, the wind biting at her face, and felt the weight of the day pressing down on her before it had even begun. The streets were crowded, people moving in hurried paths, each absorbed in their own world. She moved along with them, invisible, a shadow in the bustling city. Her mind raced with thoughts of what she had lost, what she had failed to keep, and what seemed impossible to regain. She walked past the shops, the warm light from the windows only deepening her sense of exclusion. Inside, people laughed, sipped coffee, and bought gifts for loved ones. Outside, she carried the cold reality of her loneliness. She tried to distract herself with practical matters, stopping by a small convenience store to buy breakfast. The cashier offered a smile, and she returned it faintly, but it did little to lift her mood. She ate a bagel while sitting on a bench nearby, watching the world move around her. The bagel was dry, the coffee too bitter, but it was fuel, and she needed fuel to keep going. By mid-morning, she reached the center of the city where tall buildings cast long shadows across the streets. She had to run an errand, a task she had been putting off because it reminded her of her failures. She stepped into a bank to speak with someone about her overdue accounts, hoping for some guidance or mercy. The teller, polite but firm, explained the options, none of which seemed realistic for her. She left the bank feeling smaller, more invisible than before, her hopes slipping away like sand through her fingers as she walked back onto the street. The wind seemed sharper, cutting through her coat, chilling her to the bone. She hugged herself, wishing for warmth, for comfort, for someone to notice the weight she carried. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She looked at it, hoping for a message from a friend, perhaps a note of encouragement. But it was just another notification from a store, a reminder of a sale, an advertisement she did not care about. She slipped it back into her pocket, her shoulders sagging. Her steps grew slower as the day stretched on. She had no energy left to pretend she was okay. The city felt heavier, the sounds harsher, the crowds more distant. She wandered into a quiet side street, seeking a moment of peace, a place to breathe. She stopped near a small park, its benches empty, its trees bare in the cold. She sat down, pulling her coat tighter, her eyes tracing the cracks in the pavement, the way the wind made the branches sway. She felt utterly alone, a sense of despair pressing down on her chest so heavily she could barely breathe. She thought about the people she had lost along the way. Not to death, but to life, moving on. Friends who had stopped calling, lovers who had left quietly, opportunities she had missed because of fear or hesitation. Each memory brought a pang, a reminder that she had somehow been left behind. Tears pricked her eyes, and she brushed them away quickly. Hating the vulnerability, hating that she felt so small in a city filled with millions. The sky darkened as afternoon approached, clouds gathering in heavy layers that promised snow. She stood, shivering, unsure of where to go next. Her mind raced with self-reproach and worry. How would she pay for the bus to get home? How would she manage another night in a cold apartment, alone and hungry. Each thought was heavier than the last, each step forward a struggle against the weight of hopelessness. As she wandered aimlessly, she noticed a small group of people helping a man who had tripped on the icy sidewalk. They offered assistance, kind words, smiles that seemed genuine. She stopped for a moment, watching them. A small spark of something, almost forgotten, flickered in her heart. She had not seen kindness like that in weeks, maybe months. It was a simple act, nothing grand. But it reminded her that the world was not entirely cold. There were people who cared. She shook her head, pushing the thought away. She could not rely on others. She had to survive on her own. But as she walked past, she caught sight of a stranger on a nearby bench. The stranger was middle-aged, dressed in layers against the cold, with a calm presence that seemed to radiate warmth. He glanced at her and offered a small smile, not intrusive, just a quiet acknowledgement of her existence. She hesitated, unsure of what to do. Part of her wanted to ignore him, to continue her walk through the gray city, but another part of her, the part that had almost forgotten what it felt like to be seen, felt drawn to that simple gesture. She slowed her steps, caught herself staring at him for longer than she intended, and felt a strange sensation she had not experienced in a long time. Hope. She moved closer, not knowing why, and sat on a nearby bench. The stranger nodded politely, a gesture of recognition, and returned to his own quiet space. She wrapped her hands around her coat, feeling the cold seep into her bones. But the presence of another human being, even a stranger, made the loneliness a little more bearable. She realized she had been walking through the day without noticing anything beyond her despair. Now for a moment she felt seen, and it was enough to make her pause and breathe, as the sky turned a deeper gray, and the wind carried the first flakes of snow. She sat quietly, her mind still heavy, but slightly lighter. She did not know the stranger's story, and she knew nothing about what tomorrow would bring. But in that brief encounter, she felt a flicker of possibility. Maybe, just maybe, not everything was lost. She stayed there for a while, watching the snow, listening to the city around her, and for the first time that day, she allowed herself to hope that she might not be invisible after all. The snow continued to fall softly around her as she sat on the bench, her coat wrapped tightly around her. She had not moved since the stranger had smiled at her. At first she told herself it was nothing, just a small gesture in a busy city. But as she watched him quietly sipping his coffee, she felt something shift inside her. It was a feeling she had almost forgotten, the warmth of human kindness. Simple and unpretentious. For a while she just observed, letting herself be present without judgment. The stranger did not say anything at first. He just offered a quiet, steady presence. In a city that had seemed indifferent and harsh, it was unusual to find someone who seemed genuinely aware of the people around him. She wondered if he noticed her sadness, or if he simply recognized another human being needing acknowledgement. Either way, it mattered to her more than she expected. Eventually he spoke, a voice calm and soft, almost hesitant. He asked if she was cold, if she needed something to drink. She blinked, unsure how to respond. Most people avoided her gaze, pretended not to see her struggles. But here was someone offering help without expecting anything in return. She shook her head, unsure if she could trust even herself to accept it. He smiled again quietly, as if understanding her hesitation. "Sometimes we just need a warm cup to remind us that the world isn't always harsh," he said gently, placing a disposable coffee cup on the bench beside her. She looked at it, and for a moment she could not speak. It felt too strange, too unfamiliar, to accept such kindness. But the warmth radiating from the cup seemed to carry more than heat. It carried a feeling of being noticed, being acknowledged in a way that had been missing for so long. She took a careful sip. The warmth spread slowly through her body, and with it, a small spark of relief. She realized she had not eaten properly that morning, had barely slept, and had been running on sheer exhaustion and anxiety. The coffee was just a drink, but it was a small reminder that she could take care of herself, that she could accept care without shame. The stranger introduced himself simply, offering a name that felt comfortable to hear, not too formal or forced. She responded with hers, though the sound of it felt awkward to her ears. She was not used to saying it aloud to someone who was kind without ulterior motives. They spoke in small, cautious sentences, at first about the weather, the snowfall, and the quiet streets. But gradually, the conversation began to flow more naturally, moving toward stories and experiences. He told her about small moments in his life, the ways he found meaning in everyday kindness, how he would offer a cup of coffee to a stranger, or how he remembered small details about people he met. He did not boast. There was no need. It was as if he had a philosophy of noticing the unnoticed, of caring without expecting recognition. She listened, fascinated, and slowly found herself opening up, telling him about the struggles that had weighed her down, about the job she had lost, the friends she had grown distant from, and the loneliness that had crept into every corner of her life. She did not expect him to respond with understanding, yet he did. He listened without interruption, without judgment, and when he spoke, his words were measured and kind. He reminded her gently that hardship was not a permanent state, that small steps could make a difference, and that even in the darkest times, moments of connection could appear unexpectedly. She felt the tension in her body ease slightly, her mind quieting from the constant worry that had dominated her thoughts for weeks. The snow fell thicker now, dusting the benches, the trees, and the pavement. It made the city quieter, softer, almost magical. She noticed how the light reflected off the snowflakes, how the world seemed more alive, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to simply exist in the moment, without fear or shame. The stranger's presence made the cold more bearable, the loneliness slightly less crushing. After a while, he suggested walking together, just a short distance, to a small bakery nearby. She hesitated at first, unsure if she was ready to leave the safety of the bench. But something inside her nudged her forward. They walked slowly, side by side, the crunch of snow beneath their feet punctuating the silence. He pointed out small things along the way, a window display, a stray cat seeking shelter, a child laughing in the distance. These ordinary observations felt extraordinary to her, because someone else had noticed them and shared them with her. Inside the bakery, the warmth hit her immediately, melting some of the chill that had settled deep in her bones. The smell of bread and pastries, sweet and comforting, filled the space. They found a small table near the window, and he suggested sharing a pastry, something simple, yet thoughtful. She agreed, the act feeling strangely significant. She realized she had not shared a meal with a stranger or anyone in a long time. It was a small gesture, but it reminded her that she was capable of trust. Of connection, they talked more over tea and pastry, the conversation weaving between light-hearted observations and deeper reflections. She found herself laughing softly at a story he told, the sound unfamiliar but comforting. It had been weeks since she had allowed herself to laugh without self-consciousness or fear. She felt the tension in her chest ease, a small relief from the constant burden of stress and worry. As they spoke, she began to recognize a change within herself. The sharp edge of despair had dulled slightly, replaced with curiosity and a sense of possibility. The stranger did not offer solutions to her problems. He did not promise an easy path or quick fixes. Instead, he offered something perhaps more valuable: understanding, presence, and acknowledgement. It reminded her that she was not alone, that even in her struggles, she could find moments of grace and human connection. Time passed quickly, the afternoon slipping toward evening. The snow outside continued to fall, creating a quiet world that seemed separate from the city's usual chaos. She realized she had spent hours in conversation with someone she had just met, yet it felt as though she had known him for a long time. The weight on her shoulders had lightened, not entirely gone, but enough to make the next steps seem less impossible. When it was time to leave, he walked with her to the edge of the street where she would catch a bus back to her apartment. She felt a pang of reluctance, not wanting the moment to end, not wanting to return to the cold and the weight of her life. But he smiled gently, offering reassurance that their paths might cross again, that small acts of kindness could appear in the most unexpected places. She nodded, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the coffee or the bakery, but with the simple acknowledgement that she mattered. even in a small way? As she boarded the bus, she clutched her coat tighter. Feeling the lingering warmth of the afternoon, the conversation, the shared moments of connection, she watched the city blur past the window, snowflakes swirling in the wind, and for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to imagine the possibility of hope. She did not know what the future held, and the uncertainties were still there, pressing at the edges of her mind. But she carried with her a new understanding, that kindness could appear when least expected, that strangers could offer care without obligation, and that even at her lowest point, small gestures could light a path forward. Back in her apartment, she placed the leftover pastry on the counter. Noticing the simple beauty of having something to eat without rush or worry, she sat down, wrapped in her scarf, reflecting on the afternoon. She realized that the encounter had shifted something within her, however slightly. It was a reminder that the world was not entirely unkind, that human connection could appear unexpectedly, and that she could survive. Even if just one small step at a time, she thought about the stranger, about the smile that had greeted her, the words that had comforted her, and the presence that had reminded her of the value of noticing and being noticed. She did not know if she would ever see him again, but it no longer mattered. What mattered was the impact he had left, a quiet ripple of kindness that had entered her life when she needed it most. She felt a glimmer of something she had not felt in a long time, a sense that perhaps, despite everything, there was still goodness in the world, and that she might find it again in others and within herself. The next morning, she woke with a strange lightness she had not felt in weeks. It was not that her problems had vanished. The bills still sat unopened on the counter, and her apartment remained cold and small. Yet after the encounter with the stranger, a subtle shift had taken place. Something inside her whispered that life could still hold unexpected moments of grace. She dressed and prepared for the day, moving through her routine with more awareness than she had in a long time, on her way to the nearby grocery store. She noticed details that had gone unnoticed before. The way the sunlight caught on the icy streets, the laughter of children building snowmen, the soft greetings exchanged between neighbors. Small, ordinary things, yet they seemed brighter somehow. She realized that part of her despair had come from focusing only on what was wrong, ignoring the beauty of the everyday world. She began to see that perhaps she could start noticing these details again, finding comfort in the little things. At the store, she was more aware of the people around her. She smiled at the cashier, and for the first time in weeks, the cashier smiled back with warmth. The act was so ordinary, yet it lifted a small weight from her shoulders. She noticed a woman struggling with a heavy bag and offered to help. The woman thanked her with a genuine smile, and the exchange, brief as it was, made her heart feel lighter. She realized that kindness could flow both ways, that small gestures could create ripples beyond what one might expect. Back at home, she took a moment to write in a notebook she had kept hidden in a drawer. She began jotting down thoughts, feelings, and ideas that had been buried under anxiety and self-doubt. She wrote about the stranger, the coffee, the bakery, and the way their conversation had left her feeling seen and understood. Writing allowed her to process emotions without fear of judgment. She reflected on her struggles and also on the small victories, the smile she had shared, the laughter she had allowed herself, the warmth she had felt. Even minor steps, she realized, could be a foundation for larger changes. In the following days, she began to notice more acts of kindness in her environment. A neighbor helped carry groceries up the stairs. A bus driver offered a cheerful greeting. A stranger gave directions without impatience. Each small act reminded her that not all human interactions were cold or transactional. She found herself responding in kind, holding doors, offering small smiles, saying thank you. These gestures required little effort but seemed to open doors she had long closed within herself. She also reached out to a friend she had not spoken to in months. It was difficult, and she worried about rejection, but the memory of the stranger's kindness gave her courage. She sent a simple message, asking if they could meet for coffee. To her surprise, the friend responded positively, and they agreed to meet later that week. The anticipation of reconnecting with someone from her past brought a strange mixture of excitement and nervousness. She realized that trust could be rebuilt slowly, one step at a time. During these days, she also started to pay more attention to her own well-being. She cooked simple meals, trying to take care of her body in a way she had neglected. She went for walks, not out of necessity, but to breathe fresh air and clear her mind. Each step, each small effort to nurture herself, felt like a declaration that she deserved care and attention. The small victories built upon each other, forming a fragile but growing sense of hope. One afternoon, she found herself walking past the park where she had first encountered the stranger. The snow had melted slightly, leaving the paths wet but passable. She paused, remembering the moment. The conversation and the warmth that had entered her life unexpectedly. She realized that kindness could appear in the most ordinary places, and often when one needed it most. It was a quiet reminder that even in the midst of difficulty, life had moments of grace. Inspired by these reflections, she began volunteering at a local community center once a week. She helped distribute meals to those in need, guided children with reading, and assisted elderly visitors with simple tasks. Each interaction reminded her of the humanity that connected people, the way small gestures could impact lives. She noticed how grateful others were, how a simple smile or word of encouragement could brighten someone's day. The act of giving kindness reinforced the lessons she had learned from the stranger. Creating a cycle of care that strengthened her own sense of purpose, her confidence began to grow in unexpected ways. She applied for jobs she had once thought out of reach, sending out resumes and following up on applications. Rejection still came, sometimes painfully, but she no longer felt defeated by it. Instead, she saw it as part of the process, a temporary setback rather than a permanent failure. The stranger's example had shown her that even small steps, repeated consistently, could lead to meaningful change. She also reconnected with her friend over coffee. The meeting was awkward at first, filled with tentative conversation. But gradually they found comfort in each other's company. They shared stories, laughter, and support. The friendship did not erase the loneliness she had felt, but it provided a foundation for rebuilding her social connections. She began to understand that relationships required effort, patience, and trust, and that rekindling old bonds could be a source of strength. As weeks turned into months, she noticed the subtle shifts in her life. Her apartment felt more like a home as she decorated it with small touches of color and warmth. She maintained her routines, balancing self-care, work applications, and community involvement. The days still brought challenges, moments of doubt, and feelings of uncertainty. But she approached them with a renewed sense of resilience. The memory of the stranger and the ripple effect of his kindness remained a guiding light, reminding her that small gestures could have profound impact. She also began to take more risks in her personal growth. She enrolled in a short course that interested her, something she had postponed out of fear and self-doubt. The experience was challenging, but invigorating. She met new people, learned new skills, and discovered that her abilities were greater than she had allowed herself to believe. Each accomplishment, no matter how minor, reinforced her sense of agency and possibility. Throughout all of this, she kept the notebook where she recorded her thoughts, reflections, and small victories. She often wrote about the stranger and the impact of his kindness, using it as a reminder of the importance of noticing others and sharing care without expectation. The notebook became a tool for self-reflection, a way to track her growth and the subtle shifts in her outlook. Writing allowed her to see her journey in a tangible way, acknowledging both struggles and triumphs. As she walked through the city one evening, she noticed the familiar patterns of life she had once overlooked: the laughter of children, the chatter of friends, the quiet acts of consideration between strangers. She felt a deep sense of connection, a reminder that even in her darkest moments, the world had light to offer. Her steps were lighter, her heart more open, and her mind more aware of the possibilities around her. She understood now that transformation did not happen overnight. It came in small steps, in moments of kindness, in acts of trust, and in decisions to nurture herself and others. She had learned to pay attention to the little gestures that made life bearable and to extend them to others whenever possible. The stranger had shown her that a single act of care could ripple outward, touching lives in ways she could not always predict. By the time she returned home that evening, She felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. The snow had melted from the streets, leaving puddles that reflected the city lights. She paused for a moment, looking out the window, and allowed herself to feel gratitude. Gratitude for the stranger, for the small acts of kindness she had encountered, for the progress she had made in reclaiming her life. It was not the end of her struggles, but it was a beginning of something more hopeful. She realized that life was composed of countless small moments, each carrying the potential for change. By noticing these moments, embracing kindness, and taking small steps toward her goals, she could slowly rebuild her sense of self and her connection to the world. The path was not straight, and setbacks were inevitable, but she now had the tools, the awareness, and the courage to keep moving forward. And in that awareness, she found strength, hope, and the beginnings of a life transformed. Days turned into weeks, and life continued its slow, uneven rhythm. She faced challenges, as she always had, but now they were tempered by a growing inner strength. She had learned that setbacks were part of life, but they did not define her. Some mornings, waking up still felt heavy, but she approached each day with a quiet determination, fueled by the small victories she had achieved and the memory of the stranger's kindness that had sparked something new inside her. Her job applications continued. She sent out resumes, followed up on leads, and faced rejection, sometimes harsh and discouraging. Yet she refused to let it break her. Every rejection became a lesson, a reminder to refine her approach, to continue learning, and to remain persistent. She remembered the stranger's words about small steps leading to meaningful change. Though the road was difficult, she began to see progress in ways that had been invisible before. At the same time, personal life started to shift. She met her friend for coffee, and they talked openly about the time that had passed and the struggles they had faced. Reconnecting brought a sense of warmth she had missed, a reminder that human bonds, though fragile, could be rebuilt with effort and understanding. She began to reach out to other friends and acquaintances she had distanced herself from. And though not all interactions were easy, she found comfort in the moments of connection that were genuine. She also faced unexpected moments of doubt. Some days, the weight of her financial stress, loneliness, and past failures returned, pressing down on her chest like a heavy stone. She found herself questioning whether all her efforts would ever bear fruit. But when these moments came, she remembered the stranger's gentle smile, his quiet attention, and the warmth he had shown without expecting anything in return. She learned to treat herself with the same compassion he had demonstrated, to recognize that setbacks were temporary and that persistence and self-kindness were vital. One afternoon, she received an invitation to interview for a job she had long desired. Excitement and fear battled within her. She prepared diligently, practicing answers, researching the company, and envisioning herself succeeding. On the day of the interview, she dressed carefully, choosing clothes that made her feel confident and presentable. She arrived early, allowing herself to calm her nerves, and approached the process with focus and determination. The interview did not go perfectly. She stumbled over a few questions, her nerves betraying her momentarily. But she recovered gracefully, answering as honestly and clearly as she could. She left the office feeling unsure, a mix of disappointment and hope tangled together. That night, she reflected on the experience, recognizing that she had faced the challenge despite fear, and that alone was an achievement worth acknowledging. The stranger's lessons on small steps and courage echoed in her mind, reminding her that progress was often measured not by immediate success, but by the effort and resilience shown. Around the same time, she continued her volunteer work at the community center. She found joy in helping others, in offering guidance, smiles, and small acts of care. The experience gave her perspective, reminding her that everyone faced struggles, and that even small kindnesses could create meaningful impact. Each interaction strengthened her sense of empathy, patience, and understanding, reinforcing the idea that life was a web of connections, fragile yet powerful. One evening, she received a phone call from a relative she had not spoken to in years. The conversation was tentative at first, filled with cautious politeness, but gradually it grew warmer. They shared updates about their lives, stories, and concerns, She realized that rebuilding relationships required courage and vulnerability, but it was possible. The call left her feeling connected and supported, a reminder that she did not have to face life's challenges entirely alone. Despite these positive steps, she continued to face moments of discouragement. Rent deadlines loomed, bills remained unpaid, and the future seemed uncertain. There were times when she questioned her abilities, her worth, and the feasibility of her plans. But she had learned to pause during these moments, to breathe, and to remind herself of the progress she had made. Each day, she kept going, taking one step at a time, practicing patience, and allowing herself to celebrate small achievements. Her evenings became a time of reflection. She would sit by the window, looking at the city lights and thinking about the journey she was on. She noted the small changes within herself, her growing confidence, her ability to trust others, her willingness to embrace challenges, and her renewed sense of empathy. The stranger's influence lingered, a quiet reminder that even brief encounters could leave lasting impacts. She carried his example in her actions, extending kindness, patience, and understanding to those around her. She also began exploring creative outlets she had long ignored. Drawing, writing, and simple crafts became a source of relaxation and self-expression. These activities helped her process emotions and cultivate a sense of accomplishment. Each small creation, whether completed or imperfect, reinforced her growing self-esteem and reminded her that progress was not always measurable by conventional success. Social interactions grew more comfortable. She initiated conversations with neighbors, offered help to strangers, and participated more actively in community events. Each interaction, no matter how minor, strengthened her sense of belonging and reminded her that human connection was a powerful antidote to isolation. She noticed how the world seemed less intimidating when she approached it with openness and kindness. Work. And with each interview, she became more confident in presenting herself. One day, she received a tentative job offer. Her heart raced with excitement and disbelief. The offer was modest, but it represented a significant step forward. She accepted it with gratitude and determination, knowing that this was a chance to build a stable foundation and reclaim a sense of independence. It was a reminder that perseverance, patience, and small steps could lead to meaningful results. Even as she embraced this new chapter, she did not forget the lessons she had learned from the stranger. She maintained her volunteer work, continued practicing small acts of kindness, and nurtured her relationships. She recognized that life would always present challenges, but by cultivating empathy, resilience, and patience, she could navigate them with strength and grace. One afternoon, she walked through the park, reflecting on her journey. The trees were bare, yet the sunlight glimmered through the branches, casting patterns on the ground. She remembered the first day she had sat on a bench there, cold, tired, and feeling invisible. Now, she felt connected, present, and capable. The city had not changed, nor had the challenges disappeared, but her perspective had shifted. She had learned to notice the light amidst the shadows, to embrace kindness and give it freely, and to take small steps toward rebuilding her life. She realized that true transformation came from within, nurtured by patience, courage, and compassion. She had learned to face setbacks without surrendering, to trust herself and others, and to recognize the value of even the smallest victories. Life was not perfect, nor did she expect it to be, but it had become richer, fuller, more meaningful because of her willingness to embrace change and openness. As the sun dipped below the horizon, she returned to her apartment, carrying the quiet satisfaction of a day well lived. She sat by her window, sipping tea, and reflected on the lessons she had gathered. She understood that the journey was ongoing, filled with moments of doubt and triumph. But she now had the resilience, hope, and perspective to navigate it. The stranger's kindness had sparked a change, and she had carried that spark forward, illuminating her own path and touching the lives of others along the way. Months passed, and her life continued to shift in subtle, meaningful ways. She had a steady rhythm now, a balance between work, personal growth, and connections with others. The challenges she had faced were not gone, but she had learned to navigate them with resilience and patience. She carried with her the lessons from the stranger, the reminder that even small acts of kindness could change the course of a life. Her job, though modest, gave her a sense of independence she had not felt in a long time. Each morning she walked to work with a renewed confidence, aware of her own abilities and the progress she had made. The tasks were sometimes challenging, and mistakes still happened, but she approached each situation with calm determination. She had learned that perfection was not the goal. Perseverance, learning, and effort were far more valuable. She noticed how the small steps she had taken, rebuilding relationships, practicing kindness, volunteering, had prepared her to face these challenges with grace. Outside of work, she continued her volunteer work at the community center. The smiles of the children she helped, the gratitude of the elderly, and the warmth of shared human moments reminded her daily of the interconnectedness of life. She had become more confident in her ability to offer care and support without expecting anything in return, embracing the lessons she had learned from the stranger. The acts of giving, though sometimes small, carried a profound impact, reinforcing her own sense of purpose and connection. She also nurtured her personal relationships. Friends she had reconnected with became a source of encouragement and laughter, helping her feel grounded and supported. She reached out to family more regularly, engaging in conversations that had once felt difficult or strained. These relationships did not erase past pain, but they created a foundation for trust, understanding, and companionship. She discovered that human connections required effort, patience, and empathy, but that the rewards were immeasurable. Her apartment, once a cold, lonely space, became a home she cherished. She decorated it with small touches of warmth and personality, creating a space where she could relax, reflect, and feel safe. Each improvement, no matter how minor, was a tangible reminder of her progress, of the care she could provide for herself, and of the life she was rebuilding. She realized that creating comfort and stability in her environment mirrored the inner growth she had achieved. One day, she noticed someone struggling to carry groceries up the stairs near her building. Without hesitation, she offered to help. The person smiled, grateful, and accepted her assistance. In that brief moment, she felt the quiet joy that came from extending care, from noticing and acting upon the needs of another. She understood that life's hardships were not only to be endured, but could also be softened through simple acts of kindness. She had become a living example of the lessons she had learned, the ripple effect of compassion that had first entered her life unexpectedly. Her personal growth extended into new experiences and challenges. She signed up for a workshop she had once thought beyond her reach, exploring a skill she had long desired to develop. The process was demanding, filled with moments of self-doubt, yet she embraced it with determination. She learned to celebrate progress rather than perfection, finding fulfillment in the effort itself. The experience reinforced her belief that she was capable of growth, of overcoming fear, and of achieving more than she had allowed herself to imagine. Through all of this, the memory of the stranger remained with her, not as a constant presence, but as a guiding light. She often reflected on the simple kindness he had shown, a warm smile, a cup of coffee, a gentle conversation, and realized how much it had shaped her perspective. It reminded her that even fleeting encounters could leave lasting impacts, that humanity and care existed in the world, and that she could carry that forward in her own actions. She began noticing kindness in unexpected places more regularly. A barista who remembered her order, a neighbor who offered a helping hand, strangers who shared smiles and small gestures of goodwill. These moments, once easily overlooked, now filled her with quiet gratitude. They reminded her that life was a mosaic of countless small interactions, each holding the potential to bring warmth, connection, and meaning. Her confidence in handling challenges grew steadily. Financial pressures remained, but she managed them with better planning, careful budgeting, and a sense of agency that had been absent before. Setbacks still came, but they no longer felt insurmountable. She had learned to navigate life's difficulties with resilience, understanding that progress was rarely linear and that patience and persistence were essential. One evening, She walked through the park, the same place where her journey had taken an unexpected turn months earlier. The trees were beginning to show early signs of spring, buds forming at the tips of branches. She paused, reflecting on how far she had come. The memory of that first encounter with the stranger was vivid, a reminder of the potential for change that kindness could spark. She felt gratitude not only for that moment, but for the journey it had initiated. For the growth, learning, and connections that had followed. She understood now that life was composed of both challenges and opportunities. Hardship was inevitable, yet it could be tempered by compassion, patience, and awareness. The path she had walked was not easy, but it had taught her the value of resilience, self-care, and human connection. She realized that even in moments of loneliness or despair, there were ways to find meaning, purpose, and hope. Her days became filled with balance and intention. She devoted time to work, personal growth, and nurturing relationships. She continued to seek out moments of kindness and connection, both giving and receiving them. Each day, she practiced mindfulness, appreciating the beauty in small details, the warmth in human interactions, and the sense of progress in her own life. She carried the lessons of patience, empathy, and courage into every interaction, shaping not only her own journey, but also impacting those around her. She also began mentoring someone younger at her community center, guiding them through challenges she had faced herself. The experience was deeply rewarding, reinforcing her understanding of the ripple effect of kindness and the importance of sharing knowledge and support. She realized that helping others was not only a gift to them, but also a source of strength and fulfillment for herself. Throughout all of this, remained aware of the fragility and beauty of life. She learned to embrace uncertainty, to welcome change, and to respond to setbacks with resilience rather than despair. The stranger's simple act of kindness had ignited a journey of self-discovery, growth, and compassion that continued to unfold in unexpected ways. She had discovered that transformation was not instantaneous, but cumulative, built through repeated acts of courage, care, and attention. As the sun set on a quiet evening, she reflected on her life with a sense of gratitude and contentment. She had faced darkness and despair, yet she had emerged stronger, more aware, and more compassionate. She had learned to value the small acts of kindness that could change lives, to extend care to others without expectation, and to nurture herself through challenges and uncertainties. She realized that life was a collection of moments, each holding potential for growth, connection, and meaning. The journey she had undertaken was not without difficulties, but it had been rich with learning and transformation. She had found strength in vulnerability, hope in small victories, and beauty in the ordinary. In the quiet of her apartment, she sat by the window, looking out at the city lights twinkling in the evening. She thought of the stranger, of the smile and warmth that had touched her life unexpectedly. She understood that true change came from within, sparked by awareness, compassion, and courage. She felt a profound sense of peace, knowing that she had learned to navigate life with resilience, hope, and kindness. She had become a living testament to the power of human connection and the impact of small gestures. Her life was far from perfect, but it was meaningful, filled with moments of joy, care, and growth. She had learned that even at the lowest points, unexpected kindness could illuminate a path forward, and she had carried that light into every aspect of her life. The journey had transformed her, not only in circumstance, but in spirit, teaching her that hope, connection, and compassion were enduring forces capable of shaping a life. Life had grown steadily better, though not without its challenges. She had developed routines that brought stability, yet she remained open to the small surprises and kindnesses that life could offer. Each day, she woke with purpose, even if the path ahead seemed uncertain. The memory of the stranger's initial act of kindness continued to linger, reminding her that small gestures could ripple outward, shaping lives in ways unseen. Her job had settled into a steady rhythm, offering her not only financial stability, but also a sense of pride. The work was sometimes demanding, and days could be long, but she found satisfaction in contributing meaningfully. She had grown more confident in her abilities, learning to trust herself in decision-making and problem-solving. Mistakes still happened, but she no longer feared them. Instead, she treated them as opportunities to grow, reminding herself that progress was often gradual and measured in small, steady steps beyond her professional life. She continued to nurture her personal growth. She had developed a daily practice of reflection, using a notebook to capture thoughts, feelings, and observations. Writing had become a tool for clarity, helping her process emotions and track her progress. She reflected on the kindness she had received and the ways she had extended it to others. Recognizing how these moments had shaped her resilience and empathy, her relationships deepened over time. Friends she had reconnected with became trusted companions, providing encouragement and perspective when she faced difficulties. Conversations were honest, filled with laughter, support, and shared understanding. She had learned that nurturing connections required patience and vulnerability, yet the rewards were profound. Through these relationships, she rediscovered a sense of belonging and mutual care that had been missing for years. She also became more attuned to the needs of others. In her daily life, on the subway, she offered her seat to someone standing tiredly. In the grocery store, she helped a parent carry bags for their child. These small acts of attention reminded her that human interaction, even fleeting, could carry meaning and impact. She had learned to notice the small opportunities to make someone's day better, recognizing that each act of kindness, however minor, contributed to a larger tapestry of care. As her confidence and awareness grew, she embraced new experiences she had once avoided. She joined a local workshop on creative writing, challenging herself to share her thoughts in public for the first time. The experience was intimidating, and she felt nervous as she read her pieces aloud to a small group. Yet the supportive reactions of others encouraged her, reminding her that vulnerability often led to connection. She discovered new talents, built friendships, and found fulfillment in expressing herself creatively. Her volunteer work remained an important part of her life. She mentored younger individuals, guided children in reading, and assisted elders with daily tasks. Each encounter reinforced the lessons she had learned: empathy, patience, and the profound effect of small gestures. Through giving her time and attention, she felt a sense of purpose that enriched her life beyond what she had imagined possible. These acts reminded her that transformation was not only about personal gain, but about sharing care and compassion with the world. Financial challenges, while present, were easier to manage with her newfound organization and focus. She created budgets, tracked expenses, and sought creative solutions to maintain stability. Each month brought small successes: a bill paid on time, savings goal reached, a responsible decision made that reinforced her confidence in her ability to navigate adult responsibilities. She learned to celebrate these achievements without diminishing them, understanding that steady progress mattered more than instant success. One morning, while walking through the park, she noticed a young woman sitting alone on a bench, appearing tired and sad. Something about her posture and expression struck a chord. Without overthinking, she approached, offering a simple smile and a polite greeting. The young woman looked up, hesitant, and they struck up a conversation. She listened with genuine attention as the woman shared her struggles, much as she had once shared hers with the stranger months ago. She offered a warm cup of coffee from a nearby vendor, and together they sat quietly, allowing a small connection to grow. In that moment, she realized the profound symmetry of life. The stranger had offered her kindness when she had needed it most, and now she could pass that same light to someone else. She did not promise solutions or magic fixes. She simply offered presence, attention, and care. The ripple effect of that initial act of kindness had come full circle, reminding her that even small gestures could carry lasting impact. Her personal growth also extended to self-compassion. She began noticing negative self-talk and gently correcting it, acknowledging her efforts and celebrating her progress. She treated herself with the same patience and understanding she extended to others. This shift allowed her to navigate stress and setbacks with greater ease, turning challenges into opportunities to learn rather than sources of despair. She discovered that self-kindness was as vital as kindness to others, forming the foundation for a balanced and resilient life. As spring approached, she embraced the season with renewed energy. She walked through blooming parks, observed the changing world around her, and appreciated the small miracles of daily life, the scent of flowers, the warmth of the sun on her face, the laughter of children playing nearby. She had grown attuned to these simple joys, realizing that they were reminders of the world's beauty and resilience. The experiences reinforced her sense of hope and gratitude. She also found opportunities to deepen her knowledge and skills. She enrolled in courses that interested her, pursued hobbies she had neglected, sought experiences that challenged her in healthy ways. Each endeavor, whether successful or not, contributed to her growing self-confidence and sense of accomplishment. She realized that the pursuit of learning, creativity, and personal growth was a lifelong journey, rich with rewards beyond immediate outcomes. Socially, she became more proactive in creating meaningful interactions. She invited friends for small gatherings, participated in community events, and offered support to those in need. She recognized that building a supportive network required effort, but the benefits were profound. She felt a sense of community, belonging, and mutual care that had been absent in her life before. These experiences reinforced the lessons she had learned: connection, empathy, and attention could transform lives, both her own and those of others. As she reflected on her journey, she recognized the continuity of small steps leading to meaningful change. Each act of kindness, each decision to embrace growth, each effort to connect with others had built upon the last, creating a life that felt full and intentional. She understood that transformation was ongoing, not a destination, and that life's richness lay in the everyday moments and choices that shaped character, resilience, and purpose. One quiet evening, she revisited the cafe where she had first met the stranger. The space had changed slightly, yet the memory remained vivid.